Okay, this is, again, continuity in the transcendental functions. This is textbook problem 53. You're given a function, 1 plus sine of x over cosine of x, and then you're asked to determine the intervals where f of x is continuous, then evaluate the limits at these two values. So, f of x is a rational function, right? Yes, it has transcendentals in it, but remember it's a rational function because it's a ratio of two things, okay? So f of x is a rational function. By definition, rational functions are continuous. So it's continuous except where the denominator equals 0. So the denominator in this case is cosine of x. So where does cosine of x equal 0? It equals 0, right? Equals 0 at pi over 2, right? 3 pi over 2. And to generalize the formula, it's ne pi over 2 plus, right, k pi. So let's look at the limits. So that's your answer to the intervals of continuity. It's continuous everywhere except at those points. So it's continuous everywhere except those points. So that's the first question. That answers this question. Now let's look at the limits. So the limit as x approaches pi over 2 from the left of a function, of the rational function, we're gonna look at specifically what happens to the cosine function. So let's look at the cosine function, right? Because cosine, which is in the denominator, because cosine, as you approach pi over 2, right, the function's continuous everywhere except at pi over 2. So as you approach pi over 2, from the left, this thing is going to approach 0, which means that f of x, which is equal to 1 plus sine of x over cosine of x, you know, as this thing approaches pi over 2, this thing's going to get approaches 0 from the left. So it's a really, really small number. And when you divide by a really small number, it doesn't matter what's on top. This thing is going to be between 1 and 2, right? I'm sorry, negative 0 and 2. So this thing goes between 0 and 2 because sine can be negative 1, okay, which would make this 0, or it could be 1, which would make this thing 2. So a really, really, really small number divided by a constant is going to be infinity. So the answer to that is infinity. Let's look at the next limit. The limit as x approaches 4 pi over 3. In this case, it's not one of the exception points, so you're just going to use substitution. And that's using the unit circle, right? Sine of 4 pi over 3 is negative square root of 3 over 2. And again, the unit circle down below for cosine of 4 pi over 2 is negative 1/2. So find a common denominator or break it up, however you choose. I broke it up. you'll get to the same spot. Right, this is a negative and a negative, so they're going to cancel out. And I'm left with negative 2 plus the square root of 3, or an easier way to see it is that. Okay, so that's a little bit more complicated transcendental expression, but it's really basically a rational function. And you have to use your knowledge of transcendentals and their domains in order to answer the continuity question.